So I think, Paul, that is us live. So welcome to everybody who is listening as everyone starts to filter in. Obviously, I've been running Anti-Post Angle for a couple of years, but just really wanted to create some additional video content, hopefully some stuff that's a little bit innovative, a little bit different. I'm hoping to use this as well as our YouTube channel for race day vlogs and a lot of anti-post punting. So hopefully there's be a few winners along the way. I'm really pleased that, Paul, you've been able to join me this evening. I did coin you as the anti-post betting supremo, so I'm hoping you're able to live up to that. Yeah, fortunately, we can pretty much get straight stuck into things because obviously anti-post punting is not only 4 days in March. Paul's got some decent value, what he thinks for the weekend. So let's get straight into some bets for the weekend, Paul, that you think are, as I say, decent value.
Yeah, perfect. And thanks for the intro, Liam. I think when we talk about anti-post value, a lot of us talk about Cheltenham. A lot of us play those markets all year long, but there's plenty of anti-post value through the season as well. And I actually quite like some of these early season races because you're getting prices up early in the week for races later in the week. Bit of a puzzle because you've got to figure out what's going to turn up on the day, and you won't always get it right. But if you're getting it right more often than not, what you're doing is bagging value. So it's worth the effort trying to figure out and reform your own market. So as I say, sometimes you get it wrong. Sometimes trainers change their mind. Sometimes the weather intervenes. But the good thing about this time of the year is you can figure out who's got their strings forward. Some horses have had a run. There are other things in play as well. So it's all part of the puzzle. But often you'll see, let's just say for argument's sake, a 140 horse that's had a run already, probably 95% coming up against something that's higher rated at 150, 155 that needs the run. A good example was last weekend in the Old Roan. We saw Manila Drama win, horse that actually put up on the internet because I knew they were trying, and I knew others that would. You look at those and you see that's a stepping stone for something else.
Yeah. So
first you've got to figure out what's running, and then the second stage of that is figuring out what you think is fit and ready to go, who's targeting it. A lot of the publications are good for it as well. Trainers will say in the publications that these are the early season targets, and we'll touch on some of that with some of the races we're going to talk about this side of Christmas. But talking about this weekend, we've got the Wetherby Mares Hurdle.
Sorry, Paul, to interject. It's interesting you say that. So I've tried to put out some kind of punting pointers for the month of October, and you'll know better than me, having horses in his stable. But Dan Skelton was one that I suggested would be slow into the start of the season, given how his horses trended last year. And I couldn't have been further from the truth this year. He's banging in winners left, right, and centre. I'm not sure if that's a conscious effort for the title. But obviously, most trainers' MO generally stays the same as you say, but with him, got it completely wrong.
Yeah, it's kind of there's a bit of a yes and no there, really, and not a fence sitting one. Dan's a really good target trainer, and everybody knows that. So he'd be a good example of a trainer. It is a good example actually. If you go back to Chepstow a year ago, Unexpected Party beat Nappers Hill.
Yes.
Whereas Nappers Hill was probably rated £15 the better horse, but Unexpected Party was properly targeted at that race when Nappers Hill clearly needed it. So Dan's pretty smart at those kind of things, and I have horses with Dan, so I'd probably get a better view of that than most people. He's also smartened a bit from Willie sort of coming in last minute, pinching the trainer's title off him, so that will have hurt as well. As some added motivation there as well, isn't there?
Absolutely.
So look, it's true. He's probably got more horses forward this year than he has previously, but I think also he's probably got the highest quality that he's ever had in his yard. More strength in depth, so it allows him to do that. We've seen a couple of bumper horses come out already that are really smart bumper types. Well, 3 actually. One actually got turned over at Cheltenham, but it's a really nice prospect.
Yeah,
and that's bumper horses that would normally be getting just an education. These horses are particularly smart, and there's no reason not to have them forward. They can have a little break through the season and be targeted something, a couple of nice targets through the season. And we've got some valuable bumpers through the season, and one of those three probably will end up in the champion bumper. One will probably end up at Aintree, for example. But there's a lot more still to come out. They're not the only ones. I know there's a whole host of really good young horses in that yard at the moment. So he can afford to have a few more forward at this stage of the season. So, but as a general rule of thumb, we see something like Nigel Twiston-Davies has got his horses really well forward this year. Yeah. He used to do that in the past. He hasn't really done that in the last 3 or 4 years. I suspect probably trying to play that longer game. And maybe it's backfired a little bit, and it's a conscious decision to have them forward again. When you see trainers like that with horses forward, I won't say you back them blind, but, I'm looking for those kind of trainers, horses that have got the horses forward. Trainer form is significant. And, horses that have already run and you can expect to come on for a run. And, I've got 1 or 2 of those that I'll mention as we're going through this evening. So, yes, that's an absolute consideration.
Perfect. I've completely derailed you though, Paul. We were meant to be flying into some anti-post punts for the weekend. So I'll let you carry on. Fire away. What are the best bets for the weekend in these anti-post markets?
Yeah, I've got a few. So I like the makeup of the Weatherby's Mare's Hurdle on Saturday. Brighter Days Ahead is fairly sure to go to Ireland or not run at all. That really makes the market for Katera. We were talking about Dan Skelton actually by coincidence. The first one I'm going to suggest is actually Katera. She's 11-4 or was 11-4 last time I looked. She might not be that now, but she's there or thereabouts. I think that rate's a really good bet on Saturday. Burn Grip Chase, there's a couple I like in that I believe go there. And again, same thing, figuring out which horses are going there. That the market's normally a reasonably good guide to that race, and there's 2 that I like, Saint Seagal and Harper's Brook. Harper's Brook, actually, ironically, and I'm not trying to create a theme here, is also a Dan's move from. It's a Mexican's horse that moved from Ben Paulin. And as Dan said, you don't really improve horses from Ben Paulin, but I think that's just a seriously talented animal. It'll try and finish second to anything. And sometimes just a different jockey on the back or a change of scenery, and knowing that, I think he's going to go very close. I'm actually over in Ireland at Down Royal. I think it's probably more likely that Hewitt stays at home. He has got an entry over here, and they do want decent ground for him. But if they don't need to travel, they probably won't. Mm. So I guess it depends on how much water the clerk of the course has put down at Down Royal, based on Gordon Elliott saying he's not running his horses if he doesn't.
What did you make of that? What did you make of that, Paul? I wasn't sure what to make of it.
Well, look, it's Gordon's a standing dish around there for this meeting, isn't he? He starts all his best horses out there. He's the crowd pull, really. So they're not take notice of him, are they?
Without being disrespectful to Gordon, but also being honest at the same time, he's like the toddler in the playground, stamping their feet.
Look, if you're an owner or a trainer, I'm an owner. I want the best of my horse. If I can get it, then why wouldn't I? Right. If I'm wasting my breath and I'm wasting my time, I wouldn't bother. But clearly they're going to listen to him. So
yeah, absolutely. They want is however many runners he's going to send there. Yeah. He makes a meeting.
Exactly that. But as long as the ground's fine for Hewitt, he's got fitness on his side. Jerry Colomb probably ideally would like some soft ground. Gordon doesn't always have that kind of horse particularly forward at this time of the year. He has got Galvin and Conflated in there, to be fair. Obviously, Galvin had a run in America, so he'd be fit enough. But again, he wants better ground. And Conflated departed, I think it was at the first or the second in that race against French Dynamite and who was the other one? I can't remember. He's really had a prep.
There was a couple
of it was.
Yeah.
So he's not really had a prep. He didn't get past it. It was either the first or second fence. I can't remember which it was, second, I think. So Hewitt, I think he's perfect for that race, actually. It's kind of a mini King George trial and he ran pretty well in the King George last year, I thought. So I'd be surprised if it didn't go there. There's better prize money there as well. So, but it's not a given. But at the price, 5-1, I'm prepared to lose a few along the way as well. If he doesn't run, I'll just take it on the chin. But at 5-1, I think he's fantastic value because I don't actually have him favourite for that race.
But that's exactly the point, isn't it, Paul? It's about getting the value consistently along the way, and in the long term, it pays.
Yeah, exactly that. And the last race that I've got an interest in at this stage is the Charlie Hall. So I think it's unlikely that Grey Dawn will go because I think the ground's going to be too quick for that. He's got an alternative entry in the Charlie Parker. Actually, one of mine has, the King of Ryehope's got an entry there as well. That's a hot little entry, actually. So we'll take a look and see what stands its ground on Thursday. And again, we wouldn't particularly want quick ground either. But when you look at what's likely to run in that Charlie Hall, that race is probably going to cut up quite badly. There may be 2 or 3 rags running that race, but if you took them out, you can probably get down to 2, 3, possibly 4 horses. Yeah, I think Braidband's Game is a likely runner. 7-4 is probably shorter than that now. I don't know what his current price is, but 7-4 I thought it was a bit of a steal at opening price. And I've got a couple each way in French Dynamite 12-1. I know there's been money for him, so he is shorter than that. He might be about the 8-1 mark now. And hanging there at 25-1. I'm not sure what his current price, but I don't doubt that is too much different. But those 3 will run. French Dynamite's in prime form. Mouse's horses are running out of skins at the moment. That kind of helps as well. Hanging there, wants that kind of ground. 3 miles around there is perfect for that. So at those prices, all I'm doing is adjusting my staking to get the same return, whatever the result kind of thing. And
sorry, Paul. Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Because obviously, again, we won't go into it massively. We really won't. But in terms of book building, when you're doing this, even from this perspective, are you trying to clear a particular profit level when you're punting these? So you're not betting a level stake based on all their odds. You're trying to clear a profit level.
Exactly that. So the whole staking plan is around a target return, and then balancing that staking, that overall staking, to get that return. So, that kind of approach isn't for everybody, and we've talked about doing a separate video, purely on that kind of stuff. So, rather than get too deep into that, we'll do that then. But exactly that, I'm looking for a very specific return, and that Charlie Hall for me is the kind of race I really look for. I'm looking to make my own little book on that race, and there's lots of value in it. And if I can narrow that down to 3 places and only 3 or 4 contenders, for example, then it's pretty hard to lose. Yeah. Even if you got something wrong, you're still probably going to be ahead. There's a couple of horses that I'm at this point in time, I'm unsure whether they'll end up there, the Real Whacker and Thunder Rock. I wouldn't be afraid of adding a 4th one, because the aim is just to make a profit. It's not about bragging rights, about picking the winner. Quite frankly, don't give a shit about that. What I give a shit about is making a profit.
Yeah, you play it like a trader with a stock market to a degree, I suppose. Yeah,
like that. And it's the same approach to the festival. without going into too much detail, and I'm not the only person that does this. I don't know what's a good example. Factophile, being on, probably 4 or 5 weeks before he ran in the Turners for the Gold Cup next season. Those sorry, not the Turners, the advisory. Because you're getting big prices then. It's capital risk for all that period of time. And again, it's not for everybody. But it's not just one horse. I'm mitigating it across a number of horses in one race and across 28 races across the whole festival. So I don't care. Put the nose and say it's too hard. It's not hard at all. It's not as easy as it used to be. The prices are tighter. But
you did say to me, "Don't bring up book building, because we'll be here all week."
We'll stop. Let's talk about what we get on to talking about.
No, but yeah. So from the weekend selections, Paul, it was good that we can throw ourselves straight into a few bets and what you think are some value prices. Before we move on to the races we're going to cover, obviously this is anti-post punting. It's going to be very much based around that. but it's not going to be based around Cheltenham. But I just wanted to get your thoughts on trends as well, Paul. So I did some stuff last season, especially for the handicaps. So I tried to take the work out of it for people that followed me by identifying what I thought, in my opinion, were the key trends, and then what horses match those trends. So I then produced a short list. These are the key trends, I think. These are the horses who match them. Yeah. We managed to get Chianti Classico for the Ultima, albeit that shortlist was quite long. Better days ahead for the Martin Pipe, Unexpected Party, who I was all over. Funnily enough, I saw Dan Skelton's interview with Lydia and Ruby a couple of days before. They asked him about Unexpected Party, and I could tell he was hiding something. I really could. So that added even more to the fact I thought he was unbelievably well handicapped. So I've tried to do something similar here. It's very difficult with the trends that you take from, for example, from Paul Ferguson's Jumpers to Follow or any of the websites that you find that info. But first and foremost, what is your opinion on trends? Are they useful? Are they worthless?
No, look, I've seen, professional punter recently stating the Racing Post that trends are useless. In the same picture, he's got 5 screens in front of him with, it's absolute nonsense to say that they're worthless. They've got to be used in the right way. They've got to be used selectively, and they've got to be used in the context of the race in the way it is. So the makeup of a race in that particular year can be very different than in the previous 10. Yeah. So you've always got to look at it in a context. If a trend's being produced in a handicap that's bottom weight's 10 stone and top weight's 11 stone 12, generally, well, it's going to be different when you've got a compressed handicap and a big entry, and they're all within a stone of each other. Those things change. The things that generally don't change is that unexposed horses do better. That's as an overall trend. I don't think you need a genius to figure that one out. But you can still get old gnarled handicappers that end up being well handicapped again. So sometimes you get the horses for courses thing. We're going to touch on the Betfair Chase. We'll probably touch on some of that for that race, for example. There are horses that very much are specialists, flogging around in the mud around Haydock.
There's one in pink, green, and white for Venetia Williams, who's quite good around there.
yeah, exactly that. But it's a context thing. For anti-post stuff, I look for horses, particularly the unexposed horses, reaching certain thresholds. So say novices or hurdlers going across to being novice chasers. I want them to have reached certain thresholds in the first place as a hurdler. Yeah. I respect the fact that some progress later, so it's not a be-all and end-all. I am still looking for horses that come through. It's a guideline for me to get something on side earlier, really, more than anything else. But then, let's take an example. Let's say the Supreme Novices Hurdle. And this is true of, you can use thresholds for any race, but let's use a high-profile race. Let's use the Supreme Novice Hurdle. As soon as a horse has hit a 140 RPR, and I keep my own races, but again, too long a conversation for this. But as soon as a horse has hit a 140 plus RPR, you've got to be interested in it, because progression's coming, and the time you're really interested in is as soon as it's hit a 150 RPR. Because once it's a 150 RPR, more often than not, they're either going to win or place in any Supreme Novice Hurdle. Well, you can do those same things in day-to-day racing if you keep good information. You can't be a slave to them, and you'll get it wrong. But the whole point of trends and stats are that over a period of time, all things being equal, you'll be ahead. You'll get it wrong, you'll get it right, but it'll get you on the right side of the ledger more often than not.
Do you think trends are factored in trading rooms?
In trading rooms?
Yeah,
absolutely. Of course they are. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, they're even smart. They just run algorithms behind things. So
yeah, it's not the individual factor in it; it's some machine.
Yeah, exactly.
Fair enough. No, just wanted to get your insight on that. So should we crack on with the races we're going to cover, Paul?
Let's do it.
So the races are predominantly what I suppose I've considered as the key races between now and the turn of the year. The first of which is the Paddy Power Gold Cup on the 16th of November, of course, at the home of racing at Cheltenham. My first question is, I don't know if he was ever an intended runner, but Paul, one of yours was priced up at around about 16s, which is relatively short given the number of entries at that point. Was it ever a consideration to enter him earlier in the week when the entry stage came in? Was he ever going to be a runner? How is he?
No, not at all. We've got other plans for him, and I think, look, he was probably priced up because of that run at Chepstow. Often horses use that as a stepping stone to have their prep for that race, but that wasn't the purpose of that at all. We're not totally convinced that Cheltenham will suit him, if I'm honest. We wouldn't completely discount it at some point, but there are other targets that we've got through the season, and there are stepping stones and timings to his program, really. So he's in really good form. He appears in a lot of the publications, and it's not surprising because he's a seriously well handicapped horse. So the challenge with him really is he travels and jumps so well. He's not a horse that you want to see too much daylight with, though. So Harry's always having to stuff him in behind horses and just take a little pull here and a little pull there, and you're just using a little bit of petrol up every time. So I think essentially what he is a better horse in better races. He kind of wants them to go a good gallop, and you want classy horses to do that. So
it's a difference between keenness and him wanting to gallop when he sees daylight. Would he not be better back in trip?
Potentially, but then you look at the flip side of that, and we may well do that, by the way. But he should have won his Grade 1 last year. He hit the last in the Reynoldstown, where he's the only horse on the bridle. Coming to win his race, I think Harry probably just thought.
Anybody watching this is King of Rye-Hope, owned by Paul.
King of Rye-Hope, yeah. He ploughed through the last when he was the only horse on the bridle, and he won his Grade 1 that day, and that was over 3 miles at Ascot. So. Willie Mullins says he doesn't really care about the trip he runs his horses over. If they're good enough, they're good enough. Yeah. And he's kind of that kind of horse, really. He travels all over everything. He jumps like a stag. It's more about the pace of the race and not really wanting him to do the work. Maybe we'll drop him back in 2 and try that. That's an option, and it is something that we've discussed. But we'll work our way through the season, and we'll be looking to try and win that Grade 1 this season. So, but he's got a long way to go to do it.
No, but good luck to you. So, obviously, with him not being entered, last year it was a decent field. Stage Star won it for the owners group and for Paul Nicholls. But the real whacker turned up, as well as not long till May, unfortunately, no longer with us. A few stats I did mention about trends. It's difficult for me to pin horses that match the trends, especially given that a lot of it is around prep runs, which is why I did ask Paul around King of Rye-Hope, because he's one of the very few who has had a prep run, and for most of which are still remaining in the field, there's not much time between now and this race for them to get one in, and 7 of the last 8 winners had a prep run. So unless you want to consider a prep run back in July around Galway for Imagine, which personally I think that's stretching the truth a little bit, then hardly any at the top of the market have actually had one. So 20 of the last 24 have won or placed at Cheltenham over fences previously. 16 of the last 20 have run 9 times or less over fences. So as Paul alluded to, you're looking for those unexposed types. And 14 of the last 19 were rated between the marks of 139 or 149. I'll chuck it back over to you, Paul, quickly. What do you make of this market? What do you fancy? How would you play it?
Yeah, look, I'm kind of in line with that. I do like a horse to have a prep for these big early season handicaps. It's not always the easiest thing to get them fully. You can get them fit, but you can't necessarily get them sharp. And I think the other things we see time and time again, particularly over that course and distance, 2.5 miles around Cheltenham, horses become standing dishes around there. They tend, horses are often £10 better around there than everywhere else. So. There is an exception to the rule there, though, and it's Paul Nicholls. Paul Nicholls is one that that breaks your trend. He's particularly good. Again, talking about target trainers, bear in mind where Dan learned his trade. It was Paul Nicholls. So, Stage Star last year. I think his previous winner went there. I can't remember what it was off the top of my head now, but his previous winner went there without prep. And I think it's interesting that you mentioned Imagine. Imagine is trained by one of his old proteges.
Yes, of course. It's
so again,
nephew, isn't it? I think
the pupil learning from the master. So, I get your point that he hasn't run for 90 odd days or 3 months or whatever it is, and maybe you wouldn't count that. But I kind of know the thinking, and Harry Derham will have that horse absolutely ready for that race. He'll have it fully targeted at it, and I wouldn't be afraid of that at all. And I do actually think Imagine is one of the ones you have to seriously consider for the race. The other thing is
sorry, Paul. I was just going to say, just for obviously, it's not going to help anybody listening or watching. Did you manage to pinch any of the 20s before he cut into 8s?
No, I didn't. To be fair, I didn't. I hadn't been through the race quickly enough, and he was cut very quickly. So you kick yourself. Sometimes you're busy with other stuff, and it's you're on it too late. But I don't mind the 8's Ante-post. Actually, I can see him going off 4-1, 5-1. So I think 8 is probably still a bit of value. He'll be short than 8-1. Let me put it that way. Again, I've been through that race thoroughly in terms of what I think will run, and similarly what I think I'd give a chance to, and I would probably have him around 9-2, 5-1 mark on the day. So 8-1 is fine now for me. Ginny's Destiny is the obvious other one. There's no real value in his price at the moment. I think has he drifted out a bit? What's his current price? You've got it up there, haven't you?
Yes, I have. So it's bizarre.
Just rolling through now.
You go on Odds Checker, and she's priced up twice. They've double named her. One that's kind of 3-1, but she is available 11-2 generally across the board.
Yeah, okay. And again, 11-2 for a target trainer. See, I love the class angle to this race, and this is where Nicholls gets it right. So, Ginny's Destiny, has not been beaten far in the Turners, and then he's gone and reversed the form of Grey Dawning at Aintree. So, that's solid Grade 1 form, but he gets in off 153, is it? Something like that. I'm pretty sure it's 153. He's not a pound or two out, but I think he's a similar mark to Stage Star was last year.
155.
155. So he's a similar mark. I wondered whether Nicholls will run Stage Star anyway. Because Stage Star's 163, and just if you think about the logic, if you use the trainer logic, giving yourself the best possible chance, he can run Stage Star. All they need to do is try and run the exact same races they did last year.
And essentially compress the weights himself.
Exactly that. It pushes horses out at the bottom. He gets Ginny's Destiny in then off, what did we say? He's 155. So he gets him in off 11 stone 4 or 11 stone 6, whichever it is. So he's no longer carrying top weight. And also, he gets Il Ridotto in off almost bottom weight. And Il Ridotto is back at a mark, the wins around Cheltenham. So he's now got one horse that's, £8 higher or whatever it is that he was last year, £10 higher. But he's still going to run a good race off that mark. He runs the same race. He's got another horse that is off a very similar mark to that horse, and in my mind is probably slightly better than Stage Star. And he's also got another horse that's won round there, off a similar mark to it's off right now, off near bottom weight. So
that's really interesting. What do you then do if you're Harry Cobden?
Harry Cobden rides Ginny's Destiny. Freddie Ginger probably jumps on Stage Star, and Ben Bromley rides Il Ridotto. So he takes £3 off Stage Star. He takes £3 off Il Ridotto, and Ben Bromley can
use it as a prep for whatever the next target is.
Yeah, exactly that. So whether he does that or not, I don't know. But I think if he does, he's got complete control of that race. The only horse there's 2 horses that I would probably consider outside his Imagine we've just talked about, I think he could be a really nicely handicapped horse, and he's got graded back form. And I do like graded form, previous graded form for this race. And the other one is Garlaw.
Garlaw won previously, hasn't
he? Yeah, he's won it. He's won it previously. Won it 2 years ago, so we know he acts around there. He had his prep against us, King of Ryhope, beat us half a length at bloody Chepstow. And, you know, I saw that horse in the paddock. You know, there was plenty to work on with that horse. I thought he was just having a prep, and I didn't think he'd get. I thought we'd have the measure of him, and he almost did us for fitness. He got up in the last 200 yards. We were ahead. We flattened out, and he ran right through the line. So, you know, that horse will improve for that run. And they've got a bit of a challenge because, you know, I think they probably would have been thinking now that kind of mark is the graded horse. I think he would still go there with a chance. So they're the only horse that I'd be really interested in for the race. Nothing else particularly interests me. I don't think there's that much depth to the race. You know, you can look at what's Harry Redknapp's horse, Shake 'em Up Harry. You know, again, course form. You know, shouldn't be too far away. Although that best course form's on the new course rather than the old course for that horse. So I think the sharper old course probably goes against him. And then you work your way through. I just think, you know, the rest probably aren't quite good enough. I think the two to focus on are probably Ginner's Destiny and Imagine. And I'd probably have a saver on Iridoto.
Fair enough. I did like Iridoto. I thought they took far too long to send him up to the 2.5 miles. They were messing around, in my opinion, at the 2 miles. And I think if Paul Nicholls probably had his time again, or maybe he probably wouldn't admit to it, but he should have gone up in trip a little bit sooner than he did. I looked through this and nothing really inspired me at all. It was the only race I was struggling with. And then just prior to us coming live, Paul, I was having a little bit of a look around, and a horse did stand out to me. A horse that I think is continuing on the improve. She is quite a big price. Marsh Wren. She's available at around about 25 to 1. Stuart Edmonds ended up going over to Ireland, where she run against Harmonia Maker. She was well regarded for Gordon Elliott. She beat her out of sight, and then turned up at the Cheltenham Festival, finishing third behind Limerick Lace and Dino Blue. I know Dino Blue was at her first start back from injury, perhaps. So maybe she was a little bit undercooked because she was injured for predominantly a large portion of last season, wasn't she?
No, she ran in the Irish Arklet Leopardstown at Christmas, didn't she? I think. Sure, Dino Blue was. Yeah, I'm pretty sure she was running through the season.
Perhaps so. I don't know. So obviously, but yeah, I was really taken by performance when she went over to Ireland. Then she was only, as I say, around about 5 lengths off Limerick Lace. Then she ran a credible race in the National. So I thought she might have been a little bit of value in this, in all fairness. But as I say, I was kind of struggling. But if you had to come down on how you'd play this, Paul, you'd be back in Iridoto.
Yeah, I think Iridoto is an each way better than nothing. This kind of race, I think, is a standing dish. You can't, you know, 4 places available now. You know, depending on the field size, you know, you're going to get 5 or 6 places on the day. So that's the time to play the each way horses generally. It's a toss up for me between Ginner's Destiny and Imagine, if I'm honest. I like both of them. I'd probably just edge towards Ginner's Destiny for the win, just on the class angle.
Fair enough. That's pretty much a repeat of last year. What happened with Stage Star, isn't it? I suppose.
Yeah, it is.
Won the Turners. He was only obviously a couple of lengths behind Grey Dawning, and then goes and wins this. So moving on to our next race, which is the Greatwood, obviously the day after, on the 17th. Now, like we were talking before about, are these markets a little bit compressed prior to some particular entry stages? So I'm not sure if any news has come out. I've not seen it if it has, but Dos Enos was as short as 7 to 2, now 5s, and therefore a lot more value in her price than there was. Burdett Road, I've heard him talked up an awful lot by the likes of Paul Keeley. Really fancied him given his current rating from the flat. I do really like 2 in here. But again, I'll throw it over to you, Paul, and you can go first with your expertise of how you would play this anti-post.
Well, look, it's a race that has a habit of springing a surprise. There's always the good thing for the Greatwood, isn't there? But I think it's something like maybe 2 of the last 12 that come from the top 3 in the betting. So that's a graveyard race for a handicap hurdle, really. But you can't dismiss horses just because it's only 2 of the last 12, can you? You have to look at the race, in its own right. Dysart Innes is definitely too short. I think she's clearly a well handicapped horse. She is fragile. I know she had a problem from striking into herself, and she's recovered from that. I know they have problems keeping sound because she has problems with her feet. She's the kind of horse where you need to see her turning up on the day before you can back her. I'm told on good authority that that was the owner's money that got her as short as 3 to 1. I'm not sure Fergal had agreed that she was running at that point, but she clearly is now. Look, I think she's too short, if I'm really honest. The only time she's counting a big field was in that mare's entry bumper. She lacks experience in these big handicaps, and that could count against her. That said, she is a very well handicapped horse. So, you'd be a fool to completely discount her, but would you be backing her at 3 to 1 or whatever the price is now, anti-post? Not a chance. I wouldn't be going anywhere near her. I do like Burdett Road. It's hard to get past him. You think about what he's done as a juvenile. He's put 130 ratings as a juvenile around Cheltenham twice. Dysart Innes has been there once, and she put up a 123. So, at a mare's allowance, that's fine. But this is a handicap.
But do you not think, Paul, you're going to have to go at a proper clip in this? They're not going to go slow. And then when Sergino started stretching them and they went at a proper clip, he absolutely bottomed every single obstacle was in front of him, I thought.
Yeah, look, I think Sergino is clearly a class act, isn't he?
Agreed, yeah.
We're talking about a champion hurdle horse there, whereas we'd be talking about Burdett Road as a champion hurdle also run. This is a handicap, and his mark is 133. I think he is. What was he? Is a 109 a horse from the flat. He's battle hardened from the flat. He's used to these big field handicaps. It's a race that will suit him. I think the hurly-burly of this race, the pace of this race will suit him. Yes, there are some issues around his hurdling, but it's the only time we'd really seen that as a real problem was in the Triumph Hurdle, wasn't it? So, he may well just be good enough. There's the rule of thumb where you add 45 pounds to a flat rating to try and equate to what the baseline ability might be for a horse over hurdles. 45 on 109 is 154. This is a 133 horse. I'm not suggesting it's 154, by the way, but there's definitely room in his mark, and at his age, compared to her, more improvement to come as well. He's a 4-year-old, she's a 6-year-old. He's only running 3 hurdles. People look at him and think, he's been. They would see him as being no less experienced than Dysart Innes, but he's only running 3 lifetime hurdles. There's loads to come from that horse, and 2 of those runs were around Cheltenham, course and distance, putting at 130 ratings.
So the suggestion that there's a cap in mileage on all horses, irrelevant of which sphere they're running in, do you buy into that or not? So the fact that he's done X amount of mileage on the flat, that would therefore cap his ability that he can reach jumping obstacles, or do you think that's a nonsense?
No, look, I think horses differ in ability and they differ in longevity. They do reach a peak at some point, though.
Yes, okay.
And he's only handicapped based on 3 hurdle runs, not on his flat ones. So, is there a point where he stops improving? Yeah, of course there is, same as any other horse. But, you know, inexperienced, you said it yourself, you know, he can hurdle better. Well, you know, you can bet your bottom dollar James Owen's been drilling him at home over his hurdles. You know, there's improvements to come there. In these big flat handicaps, they'll bring out the best in him. You know, an 8-runner Triumph Hurdle or 10-runner Triumph Hurdle is not going to bring out the best of him. You know, a 16-runner handicap hurdle probably will. You know, look, I prefer him of the two. I respect the chances of them both. There's a couple of bigger prices that interest me. I think just on a similar principle to Paul Nicholls, by the way, I think Nicky Henderson probably could play a couple of aces in this race. He's got Lucia, who's now rated 449, so he can boss the handicap with her, and she finished third last year, and finished third in a champion hurdle as well. So she's having a prep at Wetherby this weekend, which is exactly what she did last year. She prepped at Wetherby. So you'd probably think that the intention is to go to this race. He's got under control in there. So if Lucia runs under control, then carries 11 stone 2. You know, so she's not right at the top of the handicap. He's even got Break My Soul in there that would carry 10 stone 1. Again, similar thing to a Rodotto at the bottom of the handicap. Again, don't know whether he's an intended runner, but Break My Soul's got a very similar profile to last year's winner for Henderson.
Iberico
Lord. The profile is not dissimilar. So, you know, it could be that that's the one. That's a big price at 33 to 1, but I want to know it was an intended runner. And I don't know it is. I think the other two probably are. I think the other two will probably run. And I don't know whether Break My Soul is. I'll probably have to get a tweet out to Wolf and find out.
I'm so happy you said that, because Under Control is one that I've punted at around about 20s, which isn't very helpful to people listening, because I think she's a general 12s, 10 to 1 at the moment.
I think that's a fair enough price, though. I think that's a fair enough price for her.
Yeah, I'd get involved again at that price, or if I wasn't already involved, I certainly would. I really liked her run last year. Well, I fancied her for handicaps. Anybody who's been part of my Telegram group will know that I put her up for one of the 2 mile, whatever the 2 mile hurdle race is, county, or I would assume. I really fancied her for that at Cheltenham. But obviously, Nicky's all went to pot, unfortunately, whatever issue they had in the yard. Or with their horses. A real shame, actually, because it would have added so much to the festival. But yeah, obviously she didn't turn up. Only a couple of stats, and again, it's difficult with trends in this, but 32 of the last 37 winners were 6 or younger, which won't be overly surprising, and most of which were also second season hurdlers. The funny thing is, though, one of the negative stats are the fact that Nicky Henderson runners are 1 from 19. So you should avoid them. However, that one was last year, and he also had the third in the race.
Exactly that. So Nichols has a few for this, three options for this, all juveniles from last season. The one I'd probably like him is Liari.
Paul, we're on the same page.
That Chepstow run just smacked of a prep for this. Liari was a bit more forward than all of his other runners at Cheltenham. I thought I had a good look at everything in the paddock actually at the Chepstow meeting. And Liari, I thought, was probably one of the more forward horses there, finished third. But again, looked as though it had come on for the race, and you wouldn't want to be damaged the handicap mark if the Greatwood was the plan. I think Liari is 25 to 1. One more that interests me at a big price is Florida Dreams, Mickey Richards' horse.
Well, won on reappearance was it up in Scotland?
Yeah, it did. So, you know, he's had that out early for what looks like a prep for something. He's got it entered here, so you think it's a possible runner. Had a bit of an in-and-out season last season, but there's clearly a really talented horse in there. If Lucia runs, they're getting off 10 stone 6, and that's like running free for a horse like that, because there's a bit of class about that horse. Big price, 33 to 1. You know, again, when you get into the point of extra places, the likes of Liari, 25 to 1, Florida Dreams, 33 to 1, they're the kind of horse I like to play.
I could not agree more. Liari is one that I feel that I'm owed to a degree. I had a good old lump on him at his course reappearance. Tom Malone, and I appreciate that obviously he's a sourcer and a bloodstock agent and a sourcer of horses, and he's not going to talk the horses down of which he's purchased and then sold on.
Yep.
But he could not have been more complimentary about him. And he absolutely hacked up on his first 3 appearances and then obviously bombed out when it came to the festival. But given it's Paul Nicholls, given that twice previously Nicholls has won this race with 4-year-olds, and also the fact that I saw what happened with Blue King Daru, so last year, who was pulled up at Cheltenham and then went on to absolutely bolt up at either the October or November meeting. They're the 2 that I've played. Liari at 25s, I think, is very good value at the moment.
Yeah,
I'm completely in agreement, Paul.
Yeah. So summary, Burdett Rose, the one I'm most keen on. Each way plays under control. At the price it is now, I think that's fine. Once you've got extra place, I'm looking at Liari and Florida Dreams.
Perfect. So let's move on to November. No, we're still in November. So the week later, so this race is quite interesting. Ginny's Destiny will probably crop up again as a name. So heading up to Haydock. I've got quite a punchy one at a big price for this, should he turn up. But again, I'll pass over to yourself, Paul. Grey Dawning, obviously, I know you've got multiple horses in the yard. Is this his main target early season? Do you know? What can you tell us?
Yeah, look, Dan ideally wants to get the prep in for him this weekend, but that is clearly ground permission. He won't run him on ground that's too quick. So he's got an entry in the Colin Parker at Carlisle on Sunday. He's got the entry in the Charlie Hall on Saturday. Charlie Hall, I think it's almost certain the ground's going to be too quick there. I think it'll probably be a call to the clerk of the course on Friday morning to see what the state of the ground is for on Sunday for the Charlie Parker. So as I say, Dan would ideally want to get a prep in there and then running the Betfair Chase, and the Betfair Chase is the race where they find out whether they've got a genuine Gold Cup contender or not. I think he is. I think he's a really smart horse, actually, and I think the step up to 3 miles will bring out further improvements. I know he won the Turners, but I think 3 miles will bring out more improvement from him. Again, he's the class act, but what I will say is that again, Haydock is. We mentioned it earlier. Haydock is can be a bit of a specialist type horse, as we saw with Royal Pagaille last year.
Yeah,
soft, heavy ground horses around there. We've seen in the past horses like Bristol Demai that are £20 better around there than anywhere else in any other race. So, if it came up heavy, you couldn't ignore a horse like Royal Pagaille. But, you'd be on weather watch to back him. Do you know what I mean?
yeah.
And the only other one I'd look at, it looks like a pretty thin renewal, if I'm honest. Grey Dawn in the class act at the top. It feels as though Lucinda Russell's just had that prep in for Hoy Senior really for this. I think she'll run a Hoy Senior here as well. So he'd be the one that I'd look against Grey Dawn if it's quicker ground. Would probably be a Hoy Senior.
Would you give?
I have backed Grey Dawn and Anti-Post for this, by the
way. At what price was he as big as? 3s, 4s?
I can't remember that, but yes.
No. Yeah, I remember somebody else. In fact, Spaces, I think, that you were on earlier in the year, the racing panel with Jack, and he mentioned he was backing him all the way in from 3s, but just a bit short for me to play. Irrelevant of the value element from there.
He's still probably 274, maybe that kind of price now.
Yeah, 74.
Yeah, that's okay.
What did you make of Corbett's cross run the other day, Paul? And do you think that it was a prep for this? This race was suggested. I'll take every single word that comes out of Emmett Mullins' mouth as with a pinch of salt, personally. I am very much on board with him for the Ryanair. I think back in trip, but he needs to brush up his jumping. But he suggested it was a prep to come over here. Can you see him turning up? And if he does, Any chance?
Yeah, look, possibly. But the one thing you need to do around Haydock is jump. I'm not sure Haydock would necessarily be his course. I can't say he won't turn up. And look, he's won a national hunt chase as he likes, but I'm not sure
in a bog as well, Paul. So if he does start chucking it down,
yeah. But not really sure what he'd beat in that race, if I'm honest. I think he's the graded horse against. He was a graded horse against an average bunch of horses. I absolutely piled into him for that race because he was such an easy and obvious bet. But once he gets into open Grade 1 company, that's a different ball game altogether. And what I've seen of his jumping so far, he's likely to get caught out in that kind of company. That said, horses can improve the jumping; they can get better. So he's more of a watching brief for me this season. If I'm honest, I couldn't. I make anti-post books, and I haven't backed him anti-post to Ryanair because I can't and won't until I've seen him brush up his jumping and do better.
That's reassuring. Cheers, Paul. Anyway, he ran a cracker in the bowl. He was brilliant. He travelled. He jumped well. Grade 1 company, 2.5 lengths behind Jerry Colombo, 170 rated horse. Paulie's going to hack up. You need to back him now.
To be fair, that is a fair enough assessment, but there was some holding horse.
The only other horse that was slightly interesting to me, if he does turn up, and this might sound slightly mad, he's available around about 40s, but sounds Russian. He ran a really good race behind a Hoy Senior in what's the January trial race for the Gold Cup?
Well, it's the old pillar, or whatever it's called.
Yes.
Cotswold Gold Cup.
Cotswolds, that's it. Cotswolds Chase. He ran a really good second round there to a Hoy Senior, and he travelled really well through the race, as he did then when he was brought down in the Gold Cup itself, when he was chucked into that. He then did have a year off, admittedly. But yeah, then he was eased back in and then hacked up at Perth when reverting back to hurdles. He was just one that I thought potentially might be slightly under the radar. And I suppose one of the slightly depressing things is the fact that he's rated 161, and a lot of people potentially listening won't even know who Sounds Russian is as a chaser, which probably gives you an idea as to the state of the quality of our horses over here in Britain comparative to Ireland. So yeah, I don't know. I'm speculating. Don't know if he'll turn up. What's your thoughts, Paul, on him?
Well, look, James Bowen gets on really well with him. First thing, I think he's a James Bowen type ride. Creeps into a race. Yeah. And often, this is like a race that's won by a tractor. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So if it came out soft or heavy, I wouldn't be that keen on him. Better ground, I think he is actually quite interesting. As you say, he's a 161 horse that most people just don't know who he is. And there's a race in him somewhere. Don't know where it is, don't know what day it'll be, but there is a race in that horse. And he's one I quite like, weirdly. He's one of those quirky horses you just have a bit of an affinity for, and you just hope you find the right day. So I wouldn't put you off him. The other thing I would say is that race could, the same principle we were talking about the Charlie Hall cutting up to a small field. That's the kind of race that will cut up to a small field, and he pops in as runner number 5 and finishes 3rd or something. So, I'd never put people off those kind of bets.
Sorry, Paul. I was going to say, would you potentially consider him as a value each way punt now? And is that the sort of bet you?
No. I'd want to know he was an intended runner, or that I'd found something that said that was one of his seasonal targets. I'd want something along those lines. Sometimes when we're getting a bit nearer to the point when I'm trying to frame a little market around it, I might just pull on a few contacts, see what I can find out.
I'm talking to the normal human listening, Paul, not you with your contacts. So for us, we'd have to see the price contract. So then I'll go, well, I've missed the fucking 40s now. It's 28.
Just ask me, I'll try and find out for you.
Okay. To all 461 people listening, just give Paul a text.
Yeah, Paul Bet at Paul Bet 3001. Yeah, okay.
Cheers, Paul.
Inbox Paul.
The Paul
But no,
Bet,
look, you know, without that information, then I wouldn't be back in right now. No.
Fair enough. Okay, no. So push you for a selection in this, Paul. What would you be back in, or how would you play?
I've already backed Greatwood Hurdle. And the only reason I changed, if it came up soft and heavy, he'll act on soft ground. If it came up heavy, I might just add one of the others to it. Probably last year's winner.
The final thing I will say is interest in the market. And this isn't after timing kind of thing, but I was on Royal Pagaya around about 18s, but it shows the difference in market and the respect that was given to Brave Man's Game, almost if it was a certainty to hack up round here, and how much of the portion of the market he was taking up comparative to this year. It seems like a much more open contest.
Yeah, it does. And look, if the ground was better, you might add Hoisting Your the other way around. So great dawning, heavy ground, add Royal Pagaya, good ground, add Hoisting Your.
Perfect.
Seems like a reasonable plan.
Absolutely. So we move on to the Coral Gold Cup, obviously formerly the Hennessy. Last year's winner, who absolutely bolted up, sadly no longer with us. That's all right, Gino. He really did bolt up. So current favourite is the Ultimate winner, Chianti Classico, Grey Dawning. Any Paul? Broadway Boy for Nigel TD. Mile of Mission, last year's runner-up. Trelawn, who also ran a good race in the Ultimate and the 16-1 bar. Will Grey Dawning go Haydock then here? Try and carry the weight to a Denman? I
think Chianti Classico will go to the beach here. Grey Dawning won't go there. So you can take those out. That helps the market, really. There's two I like a lot for this race, actually. Hard to split them for different reasons, but I have two that I'm really sweet on for this race.
Yeah.
First one is Trelawn. Horse is a bit of a nutter, but he's a very, very talented nutter. And he's still racing the 140s. And, that horse is a stone better than that, in my opinion.
Paul, just racking my memory, didn't he hang right horrifically round the left-handed track last year?
The Totem, yeah, weirdly against us.
Yes,
right.
It was.
It was a weird old race, actually, and I'll tell you why. Because there were two different bits of ground. So the home straight was soft ground, but was riding just as nice ground. The back straight was heavy and dead ground. It was horrible. And if you watch our horse, it's really worth watching. As soon as he hit that ground in the back straight, every time he was off the bridle. So it was a tough old race for all those horses. And actually, the other horse I like was also in that race, incidentally. So we'll come to that in a second. Okay. And Trelawn, I'm not sure how much it wasn't hanging or how much it wasn't trying to get off to the stables, because he was coming around the stands, going around the left-hand bend, going left-handed. He was going off to the right, trying to find the stables. So I think that's what the issue was. It wasn't a steering issue. I think he
wanted to go home.
Yeah, Batty was just trying to keep him going around the bend, and he was trying to get to the stable box. So, he is a bit of a quirky horse. I actually spoke to Kim Bailey on that day about him. He said, we last time we had him, he was hanging left, and now this time he's hanging right. So, he said, "You tell me what am I supposed to do?"
Five
quirky.
5 furlong sprint. That's the only thing to do with him.
But that is one seriously talented horse, and we're going to see the best of him this season. I think he only got the second fence in the Ultimate, unfortunately. Both him and Chianti Classico turned up for that, and I don't think there would have been much in those two that day. Well, Chianti Classico is rated close to 160 now, 157 or something, somewhere around that mark.
Yeah,
and Trelawn's probably 145 or 147. That's a big difference in their marks now. So I think that kind of upside is in Trelawn's mark. The other horse I really liked was actually ironically in the same race against us, and that was Colonel Harry, that won that day and beat Trelawn. You look at Colonel Harry's profile and look at last year's winner. Same stable, the profile of him and That's All Right Gino is so remarkably similar. And I don't think it's by design, weirdly. Both horses that kicked off their novice chase season over 2 miles, up to
Chepstow,
2.5.
Chepstow, wasn't it? I think, Paul.
Yeah, up to 2.5. Both ran particularly good races against graded horses, and then find themselves in this race off a handy mark. And I think Colonel Harry might actually be a couple of pounds better off than That's All Right Gino was last year. But Colonel Harry was running in better races than That's All Right Gino did in his novice season. So I'd say they think a right lot of that horse.
I was going to say, do you think his withdrawal from the Old Rowan was less to do with the fact of the ground, and maybe there was a
Don't know. They'll probably have something else that they think is a suitable prep, or maybe he just wasn't quite ready. I don't know. I just don't know.
Yeah, of course, yeah. Could be.
But I like those two a lot. Colonel Harry's 20-1, Trelawn's 14-1. I have already backed both of those horses. One that I'll also put up at a reasonable price, which ironically again we came up against in the Reynoldstown this time. That's Henry's Friend, Ben Paulin's horse. He'd be like a third pick. If the other two didn't turn up, he'd probably be the next on my list. I haven't backed him, but he'd be next on my list. So, if anybody wants to try cast in the Coral Gold Cup, the Old Hennessy, at this stage, they're the first 3 home. There you go.
Give them order again for them, Paul. Henry's Friend.
The two I really like on a back.
No, don't backtrack, Paul. We want the TriCast. Henry's Friend, yeah. Colonel Harry and
Trelawn.
There you are. Can you play the TriCast this far out? If you can, you'll be absolutely multed. I'll tell you what.
If it came, it'd be the best guess ever.
Well, I haven't got much more to add if you've got the TriCast, Paul. I didn't mind the look of Stay Away Faye. I don't think it's a race that Paul Nicholls overly loves. Obviously, there's the famous Denman wins, carrying top weight and whatever else. I adored the horse, to be honest. I latched onto a podcast where the assistant trainer at the time, probably still the current assistant trainer, Charlie, forget his surname, at the Nicholls Yard. He said he'll stay all day, and I had a little bit on the exchange at a nice price, and obviously he obliged that day. So obviously he's now Albert Bartlett winner. That form isn't fantastic, I don't think, looking back on it. So I have some nice horses in behind, but I was hoping more from the likes that finished in second and third place. He was pulled up, obviously, in his last 2 starts. He was thrown in. I'm not sure if that was almost chasing the Willie Mullins tail as he was running away with the British title, but he was chucked in at Ayr in the Scottish Grand National, where he was pulled up, and that also pulled up at Cheltenham. So maybe he is a handicapper. He's been dropped a few pounds. Over 50% of the last 19 renewals in this, they have won at the track previously, irrelevant whether that was over hurdles or in a chase. So Stay Away Faye does have that in his favour, but he's available at around about 20. So I had to side with one. It'll be slightly with heart as opposed to head. But I'd like to see him on his reappearance. I think he'll stay all day. He really will. And yeah, if I had to play one on this, it would be him at around about 20s.
Yeah, and I think that's a fair enough shot. I have to admit, I did look at him too. For anti-post purposes, with those 2 P's next to his name, I couldn't back him anti-post, or certainly without having seen him run. And he'll have a prep. He will have a prep somewhere. Clearly, if he runs well in that prep, you won't get the price that you're getting now. But I'd rather concede the price with a horse like him than 20-1, and then he goes and gets pulled up again, kind of thing. He's had a wind up, so he had a wind up fairly early in the summer, so he's had plenty of time to get used to the fact that he can breathe again. The one concern is, when the wind cuts out, it hurts them, and they're training with it, and he's had 2 runs with obviously what they've deemed to be a wind issue of some kind. Yeah, and if that hurts, when they're racing, they remember it, and if it hurts when they're training, they remember it. So sometimes they're not. They then don't put in fully when they're in training. It's a bit of a risk. It's unusual for Paul Nicholls, actually, not to get something done like that immediately. Now, it may well be that they got onto the wind issue a bit later. I don't know. But again, that's unusual for him. And this is the kind of thing that kind of bothers me slightly. Is the wind up a roll of the dice, or is it genuinely the reason for the 2 pulled ups? And I don't know the answer to that question. If I knew the answer to that question, I'd probably be inclined to take the view you have. But
Yeah.
as I say, Paul Nicholls isn't shy in giving horses wind ups. And it feels like an afterthought to me. That's my one concern. So I'll just kind of put that out there. He'll probably go and dot up now. And Mark, look, it's serious. In all seriousness, Mark with what? He's 147, is he now, or something like that?
I think he's slightly higher. I think he's been dropped from about one. I think it's about 151.
Is he in the 140s? I've got funny end up in the 140s.
I don't think he is, Paul. 153.
153. Okay. But that's still in range for
dropped £5 since the Scottish Grand National, but still 153 isn't. But yeah,
low 150s for a horse that has been a Grade 1 winning hurdler and has been running in Grade 1 novices is fine. Talking about stats in years gone by, that race used to be won by the horses that used to hit the bar in the Brown Advisory, the Southern Lights Chase.
Yeah.
He did. He hasn't quite done that, I suppose. But he's not.
I don't want to encourage you to speak out of turn, and maybe it's unfair for me to ask. Obviously, as somebody who is an owner and amongst these individuals, however, there was a suggestion that it was very much the ownership that were pushing the fact that he ran in the Cotswold Chase when he did last year. He was chucked into open company very early on his 3rd start, and it was almost as if Paul's hand was forced, is the way that I saw it. And then it was almost like Paul went, okay, fine. And then when the result came that he did, he went, I told you so, kind of thing. I'm not asking you to comment, but do you think there's any, do you think along the right lines?
Well, I don't know the answer to the question, but I also don't think it's out of the question.
Yeah.
I don't know Chris Giles. But I suspect he's a man of strong opinions, is all I'm going to say.
And so the final thing I'll throw in, and you might call me mad, because horses aged 9 or older are 1 from 73, but Remastered 2 or 3 years ago was going to bolt in this race in the Coral Gold Cup, and he fell at the second last, I think it was. It was nice to see him back on track. He was well backed in the other day, I saw, and he did win. Look, he's only off a mark of 130. He is around about 40s. He should probably be 100s, but he's maybe one. Look, if you can recapture that old form, maybe he could be 2 in 74, but he's not one massively out of the question, I don't think, at a huge price.
Hasn't Piper already qualified him for a per temp spot or something? That'd be normal MO. He'll be per temps.
Yeah, more than likely. It was just nice to see him get his head in front the other day.
Absolutely.
Main event, best day of the year. Forget birthdays, Christmas, the lot. I absolutely love it. If he's listening, which he most likely isn't, but I apologise to the French gentleman. I bored for 5 hours on the 27th of December because I saw that he was rewatching this race on his phone on Instagram, and I just talked in broken English to him about Il Est Francais. I fell in love with him that day. I thought he was unbelievable. He really took my breath away. I thought he was fantastic. He wouldn't be a bet for me in this, not 7-2, but he is the current favourite. We've mentioned a few of these that might come in here. Gaelic Warrior, right-handed track, 3 miles, surely be made for it. I think Jerry Colon would be value if he were to come, perhaps a bit sharp for him, however. Fast or slow, I know we spoke about him earlier, Paul. But how do you read this one? Boxing Day, what will you be hoping that gets in front?
Well, what's his name? Il Est Francais. Clearly that's all based on his winning the Cato Star Novices last year. He was an impressive winner of that. You look back at that form now, albeit he couldn't have done it any more impressively. There's a question mark about what he beat. I have to in my head. You know, he had the
Sorry,
run of the
sorry
race.
Paul, to interrupt. Would the time be irrelevant? The fact that he ran the Court quicker than the King George?
No, look, it depends how races are run, doesn't it? You know.
So you wouldn't bear much. You wouldn't take that.
No, but you look at the way that Hewitt ran on, for example.
Okay.
You know, a horse with pace, which means, you know, a horse with pace was finishing his race in the King George. So, you know, it suggests that, you know, some of those fractions weren't overly quick in the King George itself, whereas they were a more even gallop in the Cato Star Novices. And he also had the run of the race, didn't he? Let's be honest. He just
he just came out in front, didn't he? He was gone. Yeah,
exactly that. You know, I'm not trying to crab the horse at all. He's clearly a talented horse, and you know, it's the only form line we have really to go on other than, you know, what he's done in France, which is impressive in itself. But you know, those races there compared to, you know, I don't know, a horse that is Gold Cup class, like Fast or Slow, you know, I think those two are the wrong way around in the market, if I'm really honest. You know, getting the early prices on that, you know, on him, I think he's a lot short. Was he now about 4-1? That kind of price, Fast or Slow?
Yeah, exactly that.
I'm on an earlier price than that, but I actually think 4-1 is still fair enough for him. I think, you know, a sharpish track like that is perfect for him. You've only got to look at the difference, you know, between, you know, Leopardstown and Punchestown with him and Galopin de Champs. You know, the difference in trip and course
and direction.
Yeah. So I don't think he's necessarily right-handed dependent at all. I think maybe he's a small amount better, but
Galloping
it's more about the track. You know, he wants a sharper track. You know, a stiff course suits Galloping. You know, we never got that tested in the Gold Cup. He came down the second, didn't he? But
right.
You know, my read of him is, you know, a King George 3 miles Kempton is absolutely perfect for that horse. You know, the horse has got a touch of class. You know, I think he's going to be really, really hard to beat. And when you start to look at the likely opposition, we've just mentioned the French horse. I think he's better than the French horse, and I think he's probably more battle hardened than the French horse as well. He's been tested more, should we say? Then I start to look at the horses behind. We've mentioned Grey Dawn. He's a massive price for the King George, by the way, because if he wins the Betfair Chase, he's going to be much shorter. He's probably going to be near a tens.
He won there as a novice hurdler, didn't he, Paul? I think
he's won at Kempton before, so we know he acts around there. The one thing you'd say is if it was quick ground, and sometimes it does turn up quick at Kempton at Christmas, he probably wouldn't run. But good to soft or worse, then, you know, he'd probably be a runner. And if he wins the Betfair Chase, he's going to be 10-1 after that, and he's probably going to be, you know, 8-1, 9-1 on the day, that kind of price. So he'd probably be a bit of value. But I think the key is probably figuring out what Willie Mullins does. You know, there's 3 that are possibly in the frame for this, probably 2 more high profiles, Gaelic Warrior and Factor File. They both have been talked about as possibles for the race. I'm kind of not buying it, really. You know, for Willie to send Factor File to the King George would be really un-Willie liked, if you know what I mean. That's not the kind of route for a horse that he thinks is a potential Gold Cup winner. He doesn't normally send them to King George's. You know, he's done that in the past. He's made those mistakes in years gone by, and he doesn't tend to make them anymore. So I can't see him sending Factor File. I would be surprised. I can't say he won't, but I would be really surprised. And then only today he's talking about Gaelic Warrior as a 2-mile horse, and possibly possibly having to push him up in trip. Well, that doesn't scream about a train that's saying, you know, I'm giving 1 run before a King George. So I'm not sure he's necessarily thinking about Gaelic, albeit I think the King George would suit that horse. Right-handed round there would probably suit him. It doesn't scream to me as though he's thinking that way. And the one that I think he's probably more likely to send, and is more his MO actually, the way he thinks, is Ile Tétomp. You know, similarly to Ginny's Destiny and Grey Dawning, you know, definitely a better horse over 2.5. Can run nicely over 2, but he'll get a trip, and 3 miles around Kempton probably be perfect for him, really. He's 16-1. And I'd be inclined actually to roll the dice at that price, anti-post. I think 16-1 for the horse that I actually think is probably the more likely the woolly horses to be sent over. He may say none, don't get me wrong. But, I'll be prepared to throw a few quid each way at that. And I think it'd go there with a chance, I think Willie would quite like the idea of putting it up to Fast or Slow as well. Don't think he'd mind making sure Fast or Slow had a high race either. So I quite like the idea of backing. Well, I'm already on Fast or Slow, and I wouldn't put anybody off its current price either. I think that's fair enough. But I wouldn't put anybody off backing in. They take Tomp at 16-1 each way.
I don't mind that shout at all, Paul. I think a flat track, I think, is exceptional around a course that lends itself to that. I've struggled with this one. As I said, I did fall in love with it with Ile Francais last year in the Quarto Star. I thought he was really impressive. Irrelevant of what he did be, Hermes Allen was not a poor horse, and he absolutely smashed him. But from an anti-post perspective, I've looked through it, and I've started to think, well, maybe Willie will send his second or third string. Grange Clegg West was one of the only ones that kind of jumped out towards me potentially as a 3-miler. And he's available at a big price. But other than that, I couldn't really commit myself. And I looked, but like, you can look as much as you want to. But if there's not anything there that you perceive as value, then leave it alone.
Well, I also looked at Grange Clare West, and I do think he probably will send that horse. However, I think you'll still get a price. So I don't feel the need to back him anti-post.
And you think we'll get a price similar to what he is currently?
Well, if you think about it, well, look, he's had what price did Tornado Fly go off the year he won it?
33s.
Yeah, I don't think it'd necessarily be 33s, but I think he'll be unconsidered. No. Another just interesting, quirky fact, bringing back to the King of Ryehope, both him and Grange Clare West and the King of Ryehope ran in back-to-back points on the same card before they were sold. And King of Ryehope won his point 2 seconds quicker. There you go. We probably should run the King of Ryehope.
And you got the horse with the better constitution as well, Paul. That's for sure.
Exactly.
So moving on to what is actually bizarrely one of my favourite races of the year. I didn't enjoy it too much last year, just watching Nassalam. Never mind how many lengths he won by. He won by miles, but really impressive from him. And basically, Paul, I'm going to start this off with the two that I fancy, and I'm going to throw the one over to you. And I think she is the greatest bet in history, and I'm going to ask you to confirm or deny.
Well, I'm not sure what you're talking about then.
The first of which is Monbeg Genius. He's a 3-time winner around here. So at Chepstow, I still can't get the performance where he was third behind Correct Rambler, who obviously then went on to win a second Ultimate, and then obviously the Grand National, and Fast or Slow, who's now a Grade 1 horse. I think you can do your brains in a little bit sometimes following that particular stable and training outfit, not because they're poor, but because you don't know what's on, what's off, what's able to jump, what's not. But he's just a frustrating horse, but he's still only 8 turning 9, and I think he isn't a horrendous bet at 25-1. However, let's just get to the business end. Paul, Galliard de la Toe, she needs a trip, left-handed, soft ground. She was 8th in the National. She's still off a great mark. She's a brilliant jumper. She's great going left-handed. She finished 6 lengths of Thunder Rock in the Brown Advisory 2 years ago. 11 lengths ahead of Adamantly Chosen. 18 lengths ahead of Time Hill. 30 lengths ahead of Sir Gerhard. They're all rated between £3 and £10 higher than her. I've followed her for too long. Is 14-1 a price I can get stuck into? And can you tell me whether Dan's going to send her there?
Okay. Plans change, obviously, but she'll be targeted at the Welsh National. I think it's the right race for her. as you say, often it comes up soft, even heavy for that Welsh National. Absolutely perfect for her. The one slight doubt for me, taking off, my association with the stable, taking that cap off, is that race is usually won by a horse that's run around there before. She hasn't. She's not been around there before. Doesn't mean she won't. And Dan may find some sort of prep for that there. I haven't discussed it with him, so I don't know if that's the case. That said, don't be a slave to the trends. I think it might be, I don't know what the trend is, but it's something like only 1 in the last 10 hadn't run at Chepstow before. It's something like that. If it's wrong, no need to put whatever. But but 1 in 10 did. So maybe she's 2 in 11. So I'm never a slave to those stats, and I think she's a really good horse, and I think she's off a feasible mark for this race. And I think the way this race will be run will also suit her. Big long straight. If you think about the races that she's run and won well in, big galloping tracks, and she's just on and on and on and on. So it's that kind of thing. I also did have, so she's on my short list. I did also have yours on your other one, the short list, Montbec Genius, for similar reasons actually. He's a bit of a standing dish around there, and he's sure to be being aimed there. It'll be either that or the Classic Chase for him, I would think. I can't imagine they'd be anywhere else. And logically, given he's been there and run so well there, I would think it'd be the Welsh National. But he's got a few poor races to put right now. So I can't say he doesn't come with that health warning now. Absolutely. That's the only thing I'd say. But it could be this kind of race. This race actually sometimes just sparks up that kind of horse. But there are 2 that I'm particularly interested in. It's not those 2. If I may add Gala de Lito at some point, because I don't mind having 2 or 3 goes at these kind of races, and the exchange is your friend kind of thing. Yeah. But there's 2 that I really do like for this race, and I like quite strongly. And one is Gitmaker, Jamie Stone's Gitmaker. I think the race just looks perfect for him. Again, I think there's been quite a bit of money recently for him. Again, I jumped on the market, but what's he running through at 9 to 1? That's actually quite short now. I'm not entirely sure I'd be backing him at 9 to 1 now. Borderline, I suppose. I want double figures, I think, and I'd probably be thinking about it at 9 to 1. But I do think he is the right kind of horse for this race. Again, I do like his form around Chepstow, and I think he's a well-handicapped horse.
Funnily enough, sorry, there was a comment when we actually mentioned that we were doing this on Twitter. The comment was, if you don't put a Gitmaker for the Welsh National, then I'm not going to bother listening.
Well, we've gained a listener. There we go.
There we are. Sorry, Paul, your second one for the race.
I'll get a member of the family to listen as well, so we can double up the listeners.
Absolutely.
There's one that I like marginally more, actually, and that's Nichols Making Your Mind Up. And I hate doing this because there was another bit of cross form with the King of Ryhope in the novice hurdle season. And I reckon that's a right horse, Making Your Mind Up. It didn't go quite right last season. I think he's a much better horse than that. I don't think they had him quite right all of last season. But I believe he's being targeted at this race. And I think he's a really, really well handicapped horse. And I think he's smart. I think he's a lot better than his current mark. But he is a bit of a soft ground specialist, and I think this race is absolutely made for that horse. There has been a bit of money for him recently as well, so I suspect that there may have been something said in a Nichols stable tour or something like that that's made a bit of money come for him. But I don't mind him at that price. 10 to 1 probably feels quite short. But the one thing I will say is that the market normally finds these horses. It's a bit of a specialist race. And generally, the winners coming from the top 3 in the market. The trends are quite strong for this. Course form is really important. And more often than not, you want a horse that stays and stays, gallops and gallops and stays and stays and stays. It's a particular type of horse. And if you know your horses, you can pick those kind of horses out. So I'm actually really strong on him.
Perfect. So I think Paul was rolling, which probably doesn't lend itself overly well to the way in which you might punt these markets. But if you're going to give people who will not be familiar to or do not generally book build to try and beat the market, they're just looking for winners. Can you give me your best bets from the races that we've covered?
Yeah, we'll do. So I'll give you one from each. So let's go from the top. So Paddy Power Gold Cup, Ginny's Destiny, the Greatwood.
I was going to say, we may as well go alternate. So Ginny's Destiny for yourself, Marsh Wren each way for me, Greatwood.
Burdick Road.
Liari at 25s.
Betfair Chase, Grey Dawning.
Watch it and enjoy.
Oh, shocking. Shocking.
Sounds Russian at 40s each way.
Yeah, fair enough. Hensley Gold Cup, Colonel Harry.
Broadway Boy each way. I'll go.
King George, Fast or Slow.
Gaelic Warrior for me.
And the Welsh National, Making Your Mind Up.
Galliard de la Toe by about 25 lengths.
25 lengths.
Get onto your bookmaker, ask him for 25 lengths or more.
About half the distance the National won last year.
Absolutely, yes. Thanks so much for joining me, Paul, on the first one that I've done of this. I hope to do a few more in future. But before anybody shoots off, unfortunately, I'm going to give you the sales pitch because I am part of this, but it's well worth getting involved in. Paul has numerous syndicates running with a few different horses. Paul can tell you in more detail when I stop waffling, but I'm part of it. It's not just the fact of having the opportunity to go and be an owner for a day or an owner for a year. It's also the people that are involved. There's loads of like-minded people that you can have a conversation with. The communication's brilliant. Videos from Dan Skelton, who obviously the horses are with, but it's certainly something worth getting involved in, or even if you're just interested and just want to get a little bit more information. Paul's details are running along the bottom of the screen, so by all means get involved. But Paul, I'll hand it over to you rather than me selling it for you, although I think it's worth getting involved in. You can tell a little bit more about the horses that are actually part of the syndicate and so on.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. I appreciate that, Liam. So, look, the reason I got involved with this was I have a horse with Dan called Jeffrey's Cross, and I'm involved in a few of the forums and obviously on Twitter and so on and so forth. A few people have said to me they'd like to get involved in racing, but it's just too expensive. It's just impractical. For the normal working man to get involved in racing, it is not easy. So I kind of set out really to try and find opportunities that would make horses accessible, and that's not just about the price of the horse. It's you know what it's like, and a lot of people will relate to what I'm about to say here. A lot of us racing fans, we're the only racing fans amongst our group of friends.
Absolutely.
It's not the easiest thing to do to go racing with other people. Some people are lucky that they've got a big social crowd they go with, but a lot of people don't. It's not that they won't go racing, but it's a bit of a lonely day kind of thing. I'm a great believer in making racing as social as possible. So whether that be going racing, talking about horses, talking about our horses, it's a bit of a racing community, if you like. We will have an ownership group for each of the horses, for the King of Rye-Hope, for Spectre One, new horse coming out, be running a bumper before the end of the year. Really smart one for your trackers, but he's not on the racing post yet. What else have we got? So we've got Forever William. He should run at Plumpton in a Class 3 on Monday. And we've got Absolutely Fine, who we're just trying to get to the key to him at the moment, but we think there's plenty of ability in there. We just got to figure out how to unlock it. And once we do, I think we'll probably just go on, hopefully, on a bit of a winning run with him. But there are individual owner groups, but there's also the bigger social group. And you've seen that yourself, Liam. You're involved in a couple of the horses. And the guys are talking every day. There's some really knowledgeable people amongst that group, whether it be from an ownership perspective, whether it be from a punting perspective, whether it be from an anti-post perspective. I would suggest that group is actually quite profitable, should we say. But anyway, setting that aside, those horses are also with, the champion trainer-elect, who the top trainer in the UK last season. Unfortunately, an Irish woman came across and pipped him to the post for the trainer's title. Not bad at targeting races, I would suggest. And the opportunity to have horses in the yard with the best, what I believe is the best yard in the country, with the best trainer in the country, with a group of people there at the yard that you would not believe how much they care for those horses, and the camaraderie in that yard is unbelievable. There's something special about it. It's not coincidence that Dan Skelton is as good as he is, because he makes all of that happen. It all centres around him, and the feeling in the place is fantastic. So in terms of ownership, generally, I would encourage people to get involved, because it just makes racing that bit more special. But also, it's also possible to get involved in racing at a kind of amount that the working man can get involved in. So I mentioned Forever William and Absolutely Fine. They are in the process of being syndicated at the moment. So if anybody's interested, then just tell me. The contact details are on the screen at the moment. But also, we'll add to those horses, and getting on so well with Dan would certainly helps in terms of being ahead of the game in terms of purchasing those horses as well. So, but that's it. My involvement in racing, started as a child, all the way back from my godfather being a trainer. So, I've been involved in racing all my life. So these things are easy for me to say, and I know a lot of people haven't been involved for that length of time, and it can be a bit of it feels like a closed door. The point that I'm making really is that there is no closed door. The stuff we do is, I'm just the same as anybody else that's listening to this podcast, and if somebody was interested in the horse, they're not going to get a sales pitch. It either is the right thing or it's not, and maybe we do something together in the future, but we still talk about horses forevermore. So how's that a bad thing? I love doing it. I'm sure most of us do that are watching this.
Absolutely. And Paul, a massive thank you from me. Obviously, this is the first occasion that I've done this. No doubt there'll be teething problems. There'll be a way in which I can improve it. But I really appreciate you taking your time out this evening to join me and do this. So thank you.
No, do a good job, Liam, I reckon. Good first effort.
Cheers. And hopefully there's a few winners in there. And to everyone watching, thank you for tuning in. And hopefully we'll see you next time.
Cheers, guys.